obviously everyone knows Roe versus Wade, and people associate the Supreme Court decision with the ability to access abortion and the right to abortion in the Constitution, and that's certainly the framework that we start from. So in 1973, the Supreme Court found that the right to abortion is constitutionally protected in the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. And it overruled a number of abortion restrictions that were in place at the time that criminalized abortion, and basically made abortion legal for the first time in the United States across the country. There's obviously a lot of history leading up to Roe that we won't necessarily get into, but it builds off of the right to contraception and right to privacy, and a number of states had already started reversing their abortion bans in their states, and then the Supreme Court for the entire country said that it was illegal to ban abortion under the Constitution. There were a number of cases between Roe versus Wade and Planned Parenthood versus Casey in 1992. But in 1992, the Supreme Court issued another landmark abortion decision and scaled back on what they said in Roe versus Wade. In Roe versus Wade, they said that abortion is a fundamental constitutional right, and any abortion restriction had to be considered under the highest level of scrutiny for the courts, making it very difficult for states to pass restrictions on abortion. But in 1992, the Supreme Court said that states could actually pass restrictions on abortion as long as they did not impose a substantial obstacle in the path of women seeking abortion. And that is then the new standard in 1992 that people used to evaluate whether an abortion restriction was constitutional or not. So abortion is still a fundamental right. It's still protected under the Constitution, but the test that courts use to assess whether a particular restriction violates the Constitution is whether it imposes an undue burden, or in other words, imposes a substantial obstacle in the path of women seeking abortions. And there have been obviously a lot of cases about what does that mean. And then in 2016, the Supreme Court decides Whole Women's Health versus Hellerstedt, and it's a case coming out of Texas about doctors having admitting privileges and whether abortion facilities must meet the standards of ambulatory surgical centers. And the Supreme Court clarifies what it says in Casey in the sense that it says that when courts consider restrictions on access to abortion, they must assess the benefits of the law to women's health and balance that against the burdens imposed on women. And in Whole Women's Health, they did that balancing test and concluded that the elimination of abortion clinics in Texas in large numbers was incredibly burdensome, and the medical benefit of having admitting privileges was slim to none. And so it struck down the Texas law. So that all builds on, other cases that have come between those landmark cases, but that's where we are now.